sun has just risen on us here at Thobolo's bush camp, which is our starting point today for our journey. I must say, I don't think I've ever seen so many birds in my life. There's just birds coming and going, flying past here non-stop. I'm guessing they're just moving from their roosting spots to where they feed in the mornings, but man, there's a lot of bird life here. And birds that we haven't seen on previous parts of our trip as well. So that's very cool. But sunrise over Africa, something that never gets old. We'll soak it in a little bit, have our coffee, but then hit the road because we have no idea how long today's drive is going to take.
We had no encounters with dangerous game in our camp last night, thankfully. But as we're having our coffee, a big herd of buffalo move in right in front of us. That's a lot of meat right there. Time to get packed up though, and for Nicole and I, that's a 2-minute process to pop down the Eezi on blade, grab some snacks for the road from the fridge, and do some routine maintenance.
We've been driving on some very dusty gravel roads for many days, and one of the things I want to keep checking is the air filter. The raised air intake with a snorkel helps a lot with just not bringing the dust up from the air intake here underneath the wheel. It really helps, and I bet you'd find if we compared these two vehicles, that air filter is probably a bit dirtier because of that very reason. But that being said, if I'm driving at the back and there's someone in the front and there's dust up at this level, then the raised air intake will still suck that in, so we wanted to check it anyway. Yeah. Check your air filter.
With such a long stretch of rough 4x4 roads ahead of us over the next few days, we don't want to take any chances. We could have stayed here for hours just watching all the different species come past, but with so many unknowns ahead, we opt to hit the road.
So here's a map of Northern Botswana, and I'll show you where we're going. Yesterday we were at Vic Falls. We drove along here, we went through the border at Kazungula, went through Kasane, came into the Chobe National Park, and drove along this road here, and we are currently somewhere over here. Now today we are going into this section of the Chobe National Park and going through Savuti, and we're ending up somewhere here at Khwai. There you go, Khwai River Lodge, somewhere along here. And then tomorrow we're going through the Moremi Game Reserve and ending up in Maun. So it looks short on a map, but it's going to be very slow going all the way through here. So we got to get moving. Well, that's a cool way to start the drive. We literally just left our camp spot and turned right, and boom, a whole massive herd of Cape buffalo. If that's a sign of things to come, then we're gonna have a good drive ahead.
Today's drive will take us 187 kilometers in a southwesterly direction, and while that doesn't seem far, it's around the same distance that we drove the previous day. 100% of today's drive will be on soft sand roads, so it was going to take some time. This first portion between Thobolo's and the national park was probably the worst section of road, with very soft sand and a lot of bouncing up and down. But we held on and enjoyed the ride.
Have Jongo and Isabel started bouncing around yet at the back there?
Yes, we have. We were just like on the cold, folding up as well.
I guess this is what it must feel like to be Lewis Hamilton in that porpoising Mercedes earlier this year.
Yeah, it's not fun, but it is fun, but not fun at the same time.
We're not too far now from the entrance of the Chobe National Park. I think it'll probably be another half an hour and we'll get to the entrance gate.
Right on cue, we pull up to the Mababe Gate, which takes us into the Chobe National Park. Botswana's national parks are ludicrously expensive. They work on a model of quality over quantity, with very few accommodation spots and therefore not many daily visitors. They have to charge a decent amount to keep this place running smoothly, although based on the condition of the campsites and the ablutions, my guess is that all of the money goes towards keeping the animal population healthy. And I'm okay with that. It makes for a very wild experience. Bad roads would be a criticism in a city, but out here it actually helps keep the hordes of tourists in big buses away and makes it more enjoyable for the true off-road enthusiasts. I had a rather interesting experience on one of these narrow sand roads, a single lane road. I saw a bakkie with a trailer coming head on, and knowing that he would get stuck if he lost momentum, I pulled over to let him pass. But as he came past, he slowed down, got half stuck, and when he tried to pull away, both the vehicle and the trailer slid right into my Hilux. I tried my best to push the trailer away, but the trailer scraped along the back of my bakkie. Thankfully, the entire brunt of this force was taken by the very edge of my robust wild dog rear bumper, causing almost no damage. It's always good to be able to justify a purchase somehow. As we near Savuti, the scenery changes as the road becomes harder and we find ourselves surrounded by grassland.
So we're just passing the little Savuti airstrip over here, and we're seeing some very nice private Cessnas and stuff landing here. And people like us like to drive here and rough it and go over the bumps and feel the adventure and be punched by the wilderness. But there's also the rich and famous who like to come on safaris, and they fly in, they get picked up by a nice Land Cruiser, and they get driven around to all the spots. So yeah, Savuti is one of the most well-known camps in Southern Africa. It's a pity we're not staying here tonight. We tried to, but couldn't get a reservation. But we will be passing through, and we've got enough time to really have a good lunch somewhere close by and really soak it all in. So that should be fun.
With a few waterholes in the area, we do start to see some wildlife, and while it's not the big five that we're hoping for, it's at least something.
So we're pretty close to Savuti now, and we've made it here in good time. So I think once we get there, hopefully there'll be more animals. I see there's quite a few waterholes and stuff there, and we can just spend quite a bit of time just driving around Savuti camp and find a nice spot for lunch or something like that.
Savuti Camp is surrounded by a network of crisscrossing roads with plenty of picnic sites, baobabs, viewpoints and waterholes. So on our route planning, we factored in a number of detours as we made it our mission to see as much as we could. We started off at a waterhole that was supposed to be a lion hotspot, but we saw nothing here. Could have just been the time of day, but we weren't able to hang around.
Well, we've been driving for a good few hours already, and the animal sightings have been quite scarce. We expected more. We've seen a lot of impala, we've seen a few kudu, we've seen a few wildebeest, but that's about it. And Chobe National Park is known to have like one of the biggest elephant populations in the world. There's tens of thousands of elephants here, so those animals can't just completely vanish. They must be somewhere. I'm hoping that as we travel further south we'll come across them, but you just never know. There's so much bush here, it may be that we drive through and don't see any. Doesn't mean that they're not there, but yeah, you can't just assume you're going to spot everything. We'll see how things go. We're going to find a spot to have lunch pretty soon. You can see there's elephant droppings here, there's elephant skulls. Probably only a matter of time, I think.
One of the points of interest marked off on Gaia GPS was a spot with Bushman paintings. Wanting to stretch our legs a bit, we made the climb up the hill to try and find them.
What?
We looked for ages and were about to give up when we finally spotted them up on a rock face a little higher up.
So we found some Bushman paintings here, thanks to Gaia GPS, which has everything very well marked. Got a sable at the bottom, it looks like a sable or a gemsbok. Elephant over here, and then what looks like an eland at the top. So this is obviously what's very important to the Bushmen. They only paint what's important to them. This is their food source. We haven't seen these things yet, but hopefully we do come across them quite soon. Even the view up here is worth the climb. So yeah, we'll take some time to appreciate this and then move on, see if we can find a good lunch spot.
Our lunch spot comes in the form of a giant baobab, scarred at the trunk by elephants over many centuries. This old warrior has seen some stuff. Not wanting to take up too much time here, we set about preparing a simple meal: instant noodles, some sandwiches, and of course, coffee for the road. Moving from Savuti, the scenery starts to change yet again, with winding roads dodging between acacia trees. In the wet season, these roads can get pretty muddy and rutted. The ground becomes really hard in the dry season, but the ruts remain, and this would probably be a contributing factor to what happens a little bit later on. As we keep moving south, we start to see more and more animal activity, from warthogs looking for shade to elephants gathering on a pan, presumably to look for water. While watching these elephants no more than 50 to 70 meters away from us, we get the dreaded radio message from the vehicle behind saying that our rear tire looks very flat. It was bound to happen at some point on this trip, might as well be now, right in front of the elephants.
Well, we stopped to see some elephants on the left, and then Jason pulled up behind and said, listen, I've got a bad puncture. I didn't even feel it, but when I looked over, it was riding on the rim, which is really bad. I mean, I did not expect that. So we're filling it up quickly. Thankfully, it's holding air. I'll probably drive for a few hundred meters just to see how long it stays inflated for. And if it's a bad puncture, we'll pull over somewhere safe and we'll quickly fix it up. Hopefully we can plug it. It seems like it's filling up, which is good news. But I don't know how long I've been driving on the rim for, and I don't want the tire to be damaged. So yeah, we'll stop over, we'll jack it up, we'll probably replace it with a spare, but then I think somewhere in Mound we might have to get a completely new tire, because this one might be too damaged to carry on with. So yeah, we're looking out, because these elephants are literally 50 to 100 meters away from us, so it's pretty dodgy being out here. Let's see what happens.
Well, the air was leaking out faster than we could pump it in, so it was time to do the change. If there's one criticism I have of the Hilux, it's the tool that you have to use to release the spare wheel. It's pretty useless. I think I may need to look at a rear-mounted spare sometime in the future. We eventually got it down though and set to work while the ladies stayed on elephant watch. The hardest part of this was actually getting the punctured wheel mounted back underneath the bucky again. We ended up breaking my spare wheel tool and had to use the one from the other vehicle. But eventually we got ourselves mobile again. Everything came alive as we neared the turn of Khwai. I don't know whether it was the location or the time of day, but animals started appearing everywhere. We wanted to hang around, but we also wanted to get to camp before dark, so we had to keep moving and soon saw the Mababe Gate appear in front of us.
We're in a bit of a race against time now to get to our campsite before sunset. It's been a much longer day than we expected. I think partly because of the conditions of the roads and obviously because of the little puncture we had and trying to sort that out. I'm also wanting to drive slowly now because I no longer have a spare, so I want to be very, very careful, sort it out in Mound, but for now I need to be quite cautious. You might wonder why I can't use their spare if something happens. Well, they have a different tire size. They have 30-inch tires, I've got 31.5-inch tires, so that would be quite tricky to organize. But fingers crossed that we don't have any more issues. I'm driving carefully. We should get there around sunset, maybe slightly before, and we'll hopefully try to calm down and wind down at the end of the day and just enjoy some time together in what should be a very beautiful campsite. That's so cool.
This iconic view of the wooden bridge over the water marks the entrance to the Moremi Game Reserve and our campsite for the night, Khwai. The Moremi Game Reserve is the gateway to the legendary Okavango Delta, and we'd be exploring more of the delta tomorrow, but for now, we wanted to soak in the views around our campsite as the sun started to sink low over the water.
So we did eventually arrive safely at Khwai campsite. I've heard so much about this place, and the moment we arrived over this rickety little bridge over this little river here, I've seen this bridge in so many videos. I just felt like I'd come to a place that I've always wanted to be at. Just take a look at this. Sun's about to set over there. And there's the bridge. It's beautiful.
We were already getting a taste of how interactions with wild animals can make things interesting here in the Okavango, as the monkeys run off with a packet of sourworms. We're going to have to keep an eye on these little mischiefs the whole evening.
So tonight at our 5-star camping experience, we're going to do homemade like Prego chicken burgers. So Nicole's busy sorting out some caramelized onion for us, and Jongo's going to mallet our chicken breast, so they're nice and tender. We don't want like chewy chicken breast. Then we've got some homemade potato chips on the boil. I think it's going to be a pretty good night, even if we're in for a rough situation with no showers and toilets. At least we'll be eating fine.
This was one of the most memorable evenings of the entire trip, with stunning surroundings, great food, a fire burning, and some amarula to celebrate our first night in the Okavango Delta.
These lights on my bakkie are made by National Luna. I've had them for a very long time. They work great because they're wired into the vehicle and I can just switch them on whenever I want. It's quick and easy. However, you can't really change their position. So this is something that I've been interested in for a while. It's a National Luna light, very similar to those, but they have a little cable attached with a 12-volt attachment that I can just fit in anywhere.
and they've got these little clamps that can fit onto poles or whatever. I can switch them on, pop it in here like that, or onto any legs of awnings or tents or whatever, and they just provide light for cooking or whatever. So very useful, and definitely something that has helped us a lot on this trip.
We see some movement out of the corner of our eyes, and what do you know, it's a hyena. It walks right past our camp and makes its way to the next camp spot, and what follows is pretty comical.
Now we are in. No school.
This hyena would be hanging around for the rest of the night looking for a snack, but right now it's our time to eat, as we munch down our burgers and chips and spend the rest of the evening relaxing by the fire. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time as we head even deeper into the Okavango Delta.